Hello, my lovely rose garden. I'm Avalon Roselin.
And I'm Ray.
And I am drinking hot chocolate as ice cold as the takes in this book. Welcome back to Throne of Ass. We're on chapter 27, and I feel like we haven't moved in ages.
Yeah, it still looks like it's halfway through the book.
It still looks like it's halfway. We've been halfway forever. We're never going to get past halfway.
We're stuck in this endless second act, man.
Last episode, we had a attempt to join together these plot threads into a tangled little knot.
Did it work?
No. I don't think it did. Anyway, let's see if we can continue to be strung along. Late that afternoon, Alexis stared at the ebony clock tower. It grew darker and darker, as if it somehow absorbed the sun's dying rays. On top of it, the gargoyles remained stationary. They hadn't moved, not even a finger. The guardians, Elena had called them, but guardians to what? They'd scared Elena. Didn't Elena say that they're the guardians of, like, the passage between this world and the next? And
I don't
that's why
fucking remember.
That's why they were, like, getting pissy, because she crossed to the other side to talk to Alexis. Like,
I don't know. Did she say that the gargoyles were that?
I don't know. Alexis extrapolated that much. I don't know how, but
nothing.
It just kind of pulled that one out of her ass. But you know, we are, I assume, to believe her.
Yeah. Okay.
Because thus far she has not been presented as an unreliable narrator, either in the willfully misleading sense or in the simply ignorant to what's going on sense. So I, at this point, would assume that if she says something to be true, then the reader is to take her at her word that it is. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure that Sarah J. Maas is that clever of a writer. It's not particularly clever, but, you know.
You know.
Even that low bar cannot be cleared. They'd scared Elena enough to keep her away. Surely if they'd been the evil Elena mentioned, she would have just said it outright. I don't know. No one seems to say shit outright. Except for when, well, Elena doesn't at least. Most everyone else has been pretty, here's what you're going to do, and say, Winnie, I swear to God.
She's like, I see that you're recording.
Winnie, if you go in that litter box.
Don't mind if I shit my brains out.
I fed you hours ago.
And now it's time to shit my brains out.
Like,
it is time, Mother.
Specifically for this reason, I avoided recording right after dinner.
She is digested now. And now the poop comes.
Well, hopefully it's number 1 and not number 2. We'll keep going until we have confirmation.
We'll keep going until I suddenly can go no longer.
Through movie magic, there will be no pause for you, the listener. Oh, okay, that was pretty fast. Okay, I think she just did a little wee. All right. Winnie needs to make her opinion on this book known as well.
Winnie doesn't have an opinion. Winnie's illiterate.
We can read it to her. She has to listen to us read it. Not that Alexis was considering looking for it right now, not when it could get her into trouble, and somehow wind up killing her before she could even become the king's champion. Still, why did Elena have to be so oblique about everything?
Oblique?
Oblique. There's a $10 word for you.
Yeah. Someone cracked out the thesaurus for that one.
Obscure. Opaque. Oblique.
Yeah.
It's like a Pokemon evolution line. What's your obsession with these ugly things? Nehemia asked from behind her. Alexis turned to the princess. Do you think they move? They're made of stone, Lillian, the princess said in the common tongue, her Elway accent slightly less thick. Oh, Alexis exclaimed, smiling.
That was very good. One lesson and you're already putting me to shame.
Unfortunately, the same could not be said of Elisicles' Elway. Nehemia beamed. They do look wicked, she said in Elway.
I'm afraid the word marks don't help, Elisicles said.
A word mark was at her feet, and she glanced to the others. There were 12 of them altogether, forming a large circle around the solitary tower.
A clock.
She hadn't the faintest idea what any of it meant.
It's a clock.
It's a clock. None of the marks here matched the 3 she'd spotted at Xavier's murder site, but there had to be some connection.
So you truly can't read these?
She asked her friend. No, Nehemia said curtly, and headed toward the hedges that bordered the courtyard. And you shouldn't try to discover what they say, she added over her shoulder. Nothing good will come of it. Elisicles pulled her cloak tighter around her as she followed after the princess. Snow would start falling in a matter of days, bringing them closer to Yulmas, and the final duel still 2 months away.
Yulmas.
She savored the heat from her cloak, remembering all too well the winter she'd spent in Endovier. Winter was unforgiving when you lived in the shadow of the Rune Mountains. It was a miracle she hadn't got frostbite. If she went back, another winter might kill her. You look troubled, Nehemia said when Elisicles reached her side and put a hand on her arm.
I'm fine,
Elisicles said in Elway, smiling for Nehemia's sake.
I don't like winter.
I've never seen snow, Nehemia said, looking at the sky. I wonder how long the novelty will last. When you're not traveling, it can last a while. When you are traveling, it gets old real fast.
You say this from personal
From
experience.
personal experience. You know, it's also kind of like a really heavy, downpour of rain.
Yeah.
Awesome when you're at home and you've got the fire going and a book and some cocoa and you're just enjoying the sound, or you're sitting in the hot tub and you're enjoying, watching it. But if you have to be out in it, it sucks.
Yeah.
So, it's context is king.
Hopefully long enough for you to not mind the drafty corridors, freezing mornings, and days without sunshine.
Nehemia laughed. You should come to Elway with me when I return, and make sure you stay long enough to experience one of our blistering summers. Then you'll appreciate your freezing mornings and days without sun. Elisicles had already spent one blistering summer in the heat of the Red Desert, but to tell Nehemia that would only invite difficult questions. Instead, she said,
I'd like to see Elway very much.
Nehemia's gaze lingered on Elisicles' brow for a moment before she grinned. Then it shall be so. Elisicles' eyes brightened, and she tilted her head back so she could see the castle looming above them.
I wonder if Kale sorted through the mess of that murder.
My bodyguards tell me that the man was very violently killed.
To say the least,
Elisicles murmured, watching the shifting colors of the fading sun turn the castle
gold. They sucked his brain out with a straw. Assumedly.
It was some wild shit, Nehemia.
It's some wild shit.
Watching the shifting colors of the fading sun turn the castle gold and red and blue. Despite the ostentatious nature of the glass castle, she had to admit that it did look rather beautiful at times. You saw the body? My guards weren't allowed close enough. She nodded slowly.
I'm sure you don't want to know the details.
Indulge me, Nehemia pressed, smiling tightly. Elisicles raised an eyebrow.
Well, there was blood smeared everywhere. On the walls, on the floor.
Smeared? Nehemia said, her voice dropping into a hush. Not splattered?
I think so. Like someone had rubbed it on there. There were a few of those word marks painted, but most of them had been rubbed away.
She shook her head at the image that arose.
And the man's body was missing its vital organs, like someone had split him open from neck to navel, and, I'm sorry, you look like you're going to be ill. I shouldn't have said anything.
No, keep going. What else was missing? Elisicles paused for a moment before saying,
His brain. Someone made a hole in the top of his head and his brain was gone. And the skin from his face had been ripped off.
Delightful.
That was a pretty nasty bar fight.
That was a pretty nasty bar fight.
He lost a bar fight against a chimp.
Jesus.
You really shouldn't give alcohol to animals. It doesn't end well. Nehemia nodded, staring at a barren bush in front of them. The princess chewed on her bottom lip, and Alysicles noted that her fingers curled and uncurled at the sides of her long white gown. A cold breeze blew past them, making Nehemia's multitude of fine, thin braids sway. The gold woven into her braids clinked softly.
I'm sorry, Alysicles said. I shouldn't have.
A step fell behind them, and before Alysicles could whirl, a male voice said, "Look at this." She tensed as Cain came to stand nearby, half hidden in the shadow of the clock tower behind them.
Clock tower? Well, that's not very
scary.
Oh,
there it is. Varen, the curly-haired loudmouth thief, was at his side. I don't recall if we have ever been introduced to Varen before right now. It couldn't be Pelor or Nox or someone we give half a shit about betraying her. You know, like, we were kind of building up something with Nox, like she saved his life and he was going to owe her something, you know.
We haven't had anything with Nox for, like...
A while. Like, I'm just saying, the cast of characters in this book that we have actually gotten a chance to know is not very large.
Yeah.
You don't gotta throw some random asshole in here. Like, it could be Duke Parrington. It could be Lady Caltaine. And we could be like, what is she doing with Cain? Because we know she's up to some, like, sneaky shit. We already have such a limited cast of people to care about. And at over 200 pages into the book,
we can't be dropping new names.
Yeah, I don't really want a new guy to give a shit about. And I'm sure that we're not going to have to give a shit about him. He sounds like the mook of all time. But, like, you could have anyone else that the reader's already familiar with. At least vaguely familiar with. And we're kind of zooming through this chapter because Nehemia is here. And Nehemia is best girl. Their interactions are actually entertaining and decent.
Yeah.
Like, I give so much more of a shit about Nehemia and any scene that she's in that I don't criticize as much because, honestly, Nehemia seems like she would actually be a really interesting character to follow through what's going on.
Alas.
Given that she is basically a political prisoner here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, she's not a prisoner in the sense that she's not locked up in the dungeon, but her country is currently being occupied by Aderlin, and her father has sent her to this castle to learn a bit more about them so that their country will have half of a chance as they are being absorbed into this empire of maintaining at least some of their practices and culture and language. So to have, like, all this shit going on in the background of that would actually be really interesting to read about because, hey, these murders could just as easily be targeting her and, like, there could be political motive behind that. Like, imagine if we lived in a better timeline where these characters were competent.
Uh-huh.
And this book was actually about Nehemia and her whole, like, diplomatic, I'm here to learn Aderlin's ways, but mostly for the benefit of the people of my country. We lost whatever conflict, whether it was we decided to cut our losses and just surrender, or there was a conflict, whatever. Elwë is now being incorporated into the Aderlin Empire. She, as a princess, still has a role as a political figure from her country to uphold. So she comes to the castle, and there's, like, all this stuff going on with the King's Champion that she does not fully understand. So we still have an outsider perspective to kind of gauge, like, okay, what's going on and why is this the way they do things?
Mm-hmm.
And then Dorian, who is the enemy prince, technically, right?
Yeah.
Like, very easy enemies to lovers setup here.
Uh-huh.
Because he is the prince of the occupying kingdom, but he thinks his father's a bastard, but obviously he can't say that openly or he will be disinherited from the crown, and apparently he does have a younger brother that got mentioned, I think, like once or twice in this book so far.
Like that.
They clearly don't have any kind of relationship.
Yeah, it's so hard to keep track of what is important to give a shit about and what is just a throwaway character that we're never gonna see again and never gonna care about again. And it's just like...
You would think that the prince's younger brother would be somewhat important, especially if there are murders happening.
I'm sure I'll show up in book 3 of this however many book series.
7, I think.
Yeah, and he'll show up for to be a villain or something, and then get killed at the end of the book.
Yeah, who gives a shit? But...
Like, they're all just setting up these throwaway characters to be important sometime later, maybe. But I'm just over here like, but I don't care. This is okay. This is why I tend to favor first books a lot, because a lot of first books in a series, not including this one, are usually written as standalone books that like I can read on their own without having to get absorbed into a series to understand why all these other characters are important.
Yeah, and then it's like,
so like
bonus if you do decide to continue.
Yeah. So I'm sure that knowing at least the scant amount that we know about Sarah J. Maas, she went into this guaranteed with a series.
Probably, yeah.
Because if I recall, she has some like connections in the publishing industry, traditional publishing industry. So yeah, like,
I'd have to look it up to confirm it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, like, you know,
I mean, it came off of Fiction Press.
Yeah.
So she already had like a readership.
Yeah. And so like, assumedly, she went into this knowing that it was going to be a series. And so it reads like, oh, yeah, some of this stuff won't get resolved in the first book, and you'll just have to continue reading the series to see it all get resolved. That's why there's so many freaking plots everywhere.
Yeah, and like, there's a way to handle it, and there's this. And I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna fucking say it, alright? Harry Potter.
Yeah. Like, okay.
Harry Potter does that. Well, the first book of Harry Potter reads fine as a standalone.
Yeah, it's self-contained, and that's like why for the longest time that all of the sheeple said that the third book was the best one, but the first book was always my favorite. Back when, you know, I gave a shit about Harry Potter.
I admit the third book was my favorite. But yeah, 1, 2, and 3 are the best books of that series because they are more or less standalone adventures. Like,
yeah, and then...
Yeah, for books 2 and 3, you do need a little bit of the background knowledge from book 1. But you could literally skip book 2. You could go from book 1 to book 3 and then, understand exactly what's going on.
And then in the last 3 books, it is absolutely imperative that you read all of them in order.
Yeah, and then like from Goblet of Fire on, it just kind of became a train wreck of, okay, well now we're going to have like this big overarching thing, and there's going to be all these little hints and secrets.
Right,
and...
there was 4 books, because I always forget the Half-Blood Prince exists.
Yeah.
Like,
I couldn't tell you what happened, except for Dumbledore dying at the end. Like,
yeah,
who
Dumbledore
gives a fuck?
dies in the end, and Snape is the Half-Blood Prince. There, I spoiled it for you. You never have to read the Half-Blood Prince.
Like, even the mystery in that one was so, like, did anyone care who the Half-Blood Prince was? Like...
No.
I spent most of the book being like, oh, it's gonna be Voldemort, and they're gonna continue pushing the Harry and Voldemort connection, and... At this point, I was like, Harry's a Horcrux, right? We're all very well aware that Harry's a Horcrux.
I remember, and I know this is like getting so far away from this plot, but let's be real, this is how bored we are of this book. Okay, but I'm talking about, so I was at summer camp, at a at a summer camp where I kind of came home in the middle of it when the last book was released. So the last book was being released in my break. So, and there was one girl who was absolutely obsessed with Harry Potter. And it was like her whole world. And she got really mad that like some other girl said, "Oh, Harry's gonna be a Horcrux," and she was like, "No, no, no."
And not even in the context of, oh, I read the book and I'm spoiling it.
Yeah,
just a guess.
Yeah, it was a guess because it was gonna come out over our break, and then we were gonna come back, and so when we came back, spoiler warning, I didn't actually read the last book. I skimmed it.
I read it once.
It was a brick, and I was like, nah. But I mean, to be fair, I had kind of been skimming the Harry Potter books after 5. Like, 5 was the first one that I started to really skim. Like, I read 1 through 4, and then I was like, these are... I don't like this. I don't like these bricks that I have to lug around just to... I'm just gonna ask my friends who actually care more about this series than I do what happens. Anyway, so we went home, the last book came out, I went back to summer camp, and she was the most depressed child I've ever seen in my life. She's like, I didn't want to believe it was true, and I'm all like
this is not even approaching spoiler territory. I think by the end of book 6, anyone who was invested in the series was like, so Harry's a Horcrux, definitely, right? And he's gonna have to die to kill Voldemort, right?
She just did not want that to happen at all. And I'm just all like, you know what? Kill that boy. I'm ready for this to be over.
Yeah, like, I was just sitting there, and, you know, I was pretty young still, relatively speaking. Like, these books were released... I was the target demographic for these books as I grew up. The first one came out when I was in, like, kindergarten.
Yeah. I want to say I was a senior in high school.
Yeah, it was, like...
Yeah.
I think I was, like, in early high school.
I was going into my senior year of high school.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But yeah.
It was high school when the final book came out for me. And, you know, I was an honors English student, so... I feel like that didn't even need to be I feel like an English student, just regular English, pretty well figured out by that point, just through media literacy and trope knowledge alone.
She just really didn't want to believe it. And denial is a powerful thing.
Yeah, but we're all like, he's definitely gonna have to die, right? Like, yeah. We all knew he was gonna have to die.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, okay. Like...
I think I was like, on my fucking Facebook group, back when I still had a fucking Facebook page, I think we were like taking bets on like who was gonna kill him. Because we were like, okay, it's gonna be Snape, and like that's what Dumbledore was building up to all along, or it's gonna be Draco, or it's gonna be Voldemort himself, or he's just gonna...
Imagine the sexual tension if it was Draco.
I know.
the Drury shippers would have gone feral, gone insane.
Feasting.
You would still be hearing their screams to this day.
Or like if, you know, Hermione or Ron were gonna be forced to do it, or...
I mean, yeah, that would have been dramatic and sad, but let's be real, the Drury shippers would still be feasting to this day.
Oh, it would be inescapable.
Yeah.
It would be like the only fan art that you would see if you looked up Harry Potter.
Honestly, I get the feeling that J.K. Rowling specifically avoided that because, if I recall, she didn't particularly care for Drarry or the fascination with shipping Harry and Draco, because she very much saw Draco as a one-dimensional bully at all times.
Until she realized that fans really liked him.
Yeah.
And then she half-assed a redemption arc.
Yeah, but she was just like,
Anyway.
It was more like to shoehorn in that mother's love thing.
Yeah.
Which was a character that, like, had, 2 lines before that?
Yeah,
Draco's
who had
mom,
never been a character.
whose name I still don't remember to this day.
Narcissa? I don't fucking know. All right, pulling up out of this nosedive to get back into the nosedive I was already in. We're like 3 topics removed at this point.
We're still going down.
We're still going down.
We're trying to escape this book so much. We're talking about Harry Potter. 2 queer weirdos. You're just so like, you know what? You know what I'd rather be talking about? Harry Potter.
Anyway, so pulling up out of that nosedive and into the nosedive in progress. Okay, so Dorian, in this better plot line, wants to support Nehemia, can't. Can't be open about that. So that's why he then goes to Endovier to get Selena, because she's some kind of rebel, like, leader person who has, like, top-tier assassin-y skills or something.
Yes, a rebel leader. Something she should actually be.
Yeah, something she should actually... Well, like I said, this is the better timeline.
Yeah.
So he recruits her as, like, oh, hey, you want to, like, do this whole champion thing.
Or better
You'll
yet...
get your freedom, but, I gotta finish this or else I'll never get there. Her real job is to keep an eye on Nehemia and kind of be her lady in waiting and, like, get close to her. And so she's still playing the part of, like, oh, I'm just some jewel thief who's here to win my, clemency from the crown and hope I do well enough that they will just pardon me. But then, like, if anyone actually goes after Nehemia, she's also secretly this badass assassin. So, like, Nehemia gets the distinctive sense that she's hiding something. She doesn't know what she's hiding. So she's a little bit suspicious, but they are buddies. And, like, clearly Dorian is also involved somehow, but she doesn't quite know how. She doesn't know if Dorian's having an affair with this girl or, like, what the fuck's going on. And then, like, in the climax, you could get the big reveal of, oh, you're actually, like, this rebel assassin, and Dorian's actually been on the side of the resistance the whole time, but we had to be sneaky about it. And, like, is it still cliche? Yeah, kinda. Is it the best thing ever? No. But is it better than this?
Yeah.
Yeah, by a lot. And also, you could have a lead character of color, which would just be so nice. But anyway, we're in this timeline, and I have to keep reading now.
Hope you all enjoyed that little detour.
So that was quite the bird walk. That was several bird walks in one.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. We're having fun.
Anyway, so here's Varen, the guy who fucking started this all. Fucking Varen. What do you want? She said. Kane's tan face twisted in a sneer. Oh, I don't like how she said that. I don't know how many other confirmed characters of color we have for you to be saying that his tan face is doing anything right now. Somehow he'd gotten bigger, or maybe her eyes were playing tricks on her. I wonder if there's a way in which someone could possibly enhance their size and strength when doing a death tournament where it would behoove them to get rid of other competitors. I fucking wonder. Like, it is... I remember reading this for the first time, vaguely, but I do remember this being the moment where I was like, oh, Kane's the murderer. Because he's clearly, like, using some kind of black magic to, like, take the victim's strengths, which is why he went after, like, the most brutal ones first, the serial killers, and an assassin, because they would be the ones that would most benefit him to, like, take their strengths. Because there are certain spiritual practices in the world that do believe that if you, like, ingest or, imbibe some part of somebody, you gain their essence, their power.
Yeah.
And given that these people have had their organs and brains removed, I don't know, some obscure part of my brain just kind of made that connection and was like, oh, Kane's the murderer.
Yeah.
We still have 300-something pages to go, but... So this is where I realized that Kane was going to be the murderer. Because of course he would be. Like, up to this point, I had been thinking it would be too obvious. He's already so villain-coded already.
Yeah, like...
It wouldn't be a twist if he was the killer.
It wouldn't even be a mystery.
But so this is the part where I was like, oh, it's him.
Well, that's disappointing.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, because like I said, I only vaguely remember reading this book the first time. It has been years, and I skimmed. But I'm pretty sure that he is the murderer. And I was right about that. Like, I went through the rest of the book hoping to be wrong, and I'm pretty sure that it was Kane. So,
what else is new?
So here we go. Pretending to be a lady doesn't mean you are one, he said. Alicicles shot Nehemia a look, but the princess's eyes remained upon Kane, narrowed, but her lips strangely slack. But Kane wasn't done, and his attention shifted to Nehemia. His lips pulled back, revealing his gleaming white teeth. Neither does wearing a crown make you a real princess. Not anymore. Again, this would be such a raw line if Nehemia was the main character.
Yeah.
Alicicles took a step closer to him.
Shut your stupid mouth or I'll punch your teeth down your throat and shut it for you.
Okay.
You're such a tough girl, baddie.
I'm just like, girl, you're supposed to be a jewel thief, remember?
She's so badass.
Jewel thief.
She's defending her friend.
Yeah, but...
I hate this.
You're just very bad at this undercover thing.
Like, I'm sorry, that is just... Outside of that even, that's just such a middle school thing to say. Like, this is the kind of shit that I said to my friends' bullies in middle school. And it was cringe then, and it's cringe now. Kane let out a sharp laugh, which Varen echoed. The thief circled behind them, and Alicicles straightened, wondering if they'd actually pick a fight here. Lots of barking from the prince's lapdog, Kane said. But does she have any fangs? She felt Nehemia's hand on her shoulder, but she shrugged it off as she took another step toward him, close enough for the curls of his breath to touch her face. Inside the castle, the guards remained loitering about, talking amongst themselves.
You'll find out when my fangs are buried in your neck, she said.
Girl, jewel thief. Snaps in front of her face. Jewel thief, bitch.
Kael's not here. She's not even gonna make an attempt. Why not right now, Kane breathed. Come on, hit me. Hit me with all that rage you feel every time you force yourself to miss the bullseye, or when you slow yourself down so you don't scale walls as fast as me. Hit me, Lillian, he whispered so only she could hear, and let's see what that year in Endovier really taught you. And it's like, wow, I've never felt less tension in a moment that I should feel really tense in. Alicicles' heart leapt into a gallop. He knew who she was and what she was doing. She didn't dare to look at Nehemia and only hoped her understanding of the common language was still weak enough for her to not have understood. Or maybe she just doesn't know who the fuck you are because she's from a different country.
Yeah.
Varen still watched from behind them. You think you're the only one whose sponsor is willing to do anything to win? You think your prince and captain are the only ones who know what you are? Alicicles clenched her hand. Arthur meme. 2 blows and he'd be on the ground, struggling to breathe. Another blow after that and Varen would be beside him. Lillian, Nehemia said in the common tongue, taking her by the hand. We have business. Let us go. That's right, Kane said. Follow her around like the lapdog you are.
Boy, what are you?
This is also very middle school. At least she's the prince's lapdog.
Yeah.
You're just the lapdog of a duke.
Yeah, like, dang.
Sit down. Elisicles' hand trembled. If she hit him, if she got into a brawl right here and the guards had to pull them apart, Chaol might not let her see Nehemia again, let alone leave her rooms after lessons, or stay late to practice with Nox. Oh, so Nox does still exist.
Oh, well, that's good.
So Elisicles smiled as she rolled her...
I love Bandit.
Oh, yeah, I love Bandit, Keith.
No, Bandit. That's his name.
That's right, I was doing Bandit's voice for him.
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain was on Yu-Gi-Oh! For some reason.
What else is new?
So Elisicles smiled and rolled her shoulders as she said brightly,
Shove it up your ass, Kane.
She truly is a charmed one.
And a middle schooler. Amazing.
Amazing. Kane and Varen laughed, but she and Nehemia walked away, the princess holding her hand tightly. Not from fear or anger, but just to tell her that she understood, that she was there. Elisicles squeezed her hand back. It had been a while since someone had looked out for her, and Elisicles had the feeling she could get used to it. Just remember, when you're hopping through timelines, that there is a universe somewhere where Nehemia is the main character. She didn't actually hear what Kane said, only that it shook up Selena, so that's a tasty little mystery to chew on for a few chapters. And it could have been gay.
Yeah.
It could have been sapphic.
Yeah.
Never forget what Sarah J. Maas stole from you.
This universe is Sarah J. Maas, whereas the other universe is Sarah J. Maas is like... feral.
Other universe, Sarah J. Maas is just god-tier feral gremlin.
Yeah.
Now, the catch is that instead of being a bestseller, she's an indie author.
Yeah.
And I am the bestseller writing hackneyed slop.
I would cry.
What a tangled web we weave. But remember, to obtain something of equal value must be lost.
I will kill you.
That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange.
I will kill you right here on this recording. I don't care.
Just gotta remind everyone, my roots.
The roots. They run deep.
The roots. The 2003 anime roots, specifically. Brotherhood truthers, get out of here. Except don't actually, because I respect that you can have your own opinion that is different from mine, and if Brotherhood is the way that you enjoy the story best, then good for you, and I'm glad that you enjoy it. But if you come in here slandering 2003, when 2003 is the only reason that Brotherhood fucking exists in the first place, no. And we're moving on now, before Ray can go insane. Like, if you think I'm an 03 truther, Ray will eat your face and suck out your brain. Like,
suck out your brain through a straw.
Your
Just like what happened to that one guy. I don't even know his name. He's just that one guy.
That one guy. Anyway, POV shift tilde.
Woo!
Woo! Chaol stood with Dorian in the shadows atop the mezzanine. Oh, they fucked again.
The homosexuals are watching.
Again, it could have been gay. Could have been gay. Staring down at the assassin as she punched the dummy situated in the center of the floor. She'd sent him a message saying she was going to train for a few hours after dinner, and he'd invited Dorian to come along to watch. Perhaps Dorian would now see why she was such a threat to him, to everyone. Elisicles grunted, throwing punch after punch. Left, right, left, left, right.
Dorian knows that you're an assassin. Like, he understands.
On and on, as if she had something burning inside of her that she couldn't quite get out. She looks stronger than before, the prince said quietly. You've done a good job getting her back in shape. Elisicles punched and kicked at the dummy, dodging invisible blows. The guard at the door just watched, their faces impassive. Do you think she stands a chance against Kane? Elisicles swung her leg through the air, connecting with the dummy's head. It rocked back. The blow would have knocked out a man. I think if she doesn't get too riled and keeps a cool head when they duel, she might. But she's wild and unpredictable. She needs to learn to control her feelings, especially that impossible anger.
Yeah.
Which was true. Chaol didn't know if it was because of Endovier or just being an assassin. Whatever the cause of that unyielding rage, she could never entirely leash herself.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just a personality thing.
Yeah. I don't think her job has anything to do with it.
She has main character syndrome, and that means that she's just got that hair trigger temper that everyone loves in a main character nowadays.
Who's that? Dorian asked sharply as Nox entered the room and walked over to Elisocles. She paused, rubbing her wrapped knuckles, and wiped the sweat from her eyes as she waved to him. Nox, Kael said, a thief from Paranth, Minister Jovel's champion. Nox said something to Elisocles that set her chuckling. Nox laughed too. She made another friend, Dorian said, raising his brows as Elisocles demonstrated a move for Nox. She's helping him? Every day. They usually stay after lessons with the others. They usually stay after the lessons with the others are over. And you allow this? Kael hid his glower at Dorian's tone. If you want me to put an end to it, I will. Dorian watched them for another moment. No, let her train with him. The other champions are brutes. She could use an ally. That she could. Dorian turned from the balcony and strode off into the darkness of the hall beyond. Kael watched the prince disappear, his red cape billowing behind him, and sighed. He knew jealousy when he saw it, and while Dorian was clever, he was just as bad as Elisocles at hiding his emotions. Perhaps bringing the prince along had done the opposite of what he'd intended. His feet heavy, Kael followed after his boyfriend, hoping Dorian wasn't about to drag them all into serious trouble.
Tildy!
Time to skip Tildy! A few days later, Elisocles turned the crisp yellow pages of a heavy tome, squirming in her seat. Like the countless others she'd tried, it was just page after page of scribbled nonsense. But it was worth researching if there were word marks at Xavier's crime scene and word marks at the clock tower. The more she knew about what this killer wanted, why and how he was killing, the better. That was the real threat to be dealing with, not some mysterious, inexplicable evil Elena had mentioned. Because there's no way that these two things could be connected. You dense motherfucker.
Anyway.
Of course, there was little to nothing to be found. Her eyes sore, the assassin looked up from the book and sighed. The library was gloomy, and were it not for the sound of Kael flipping pages, it would have been wholly silent. Done? He asked, closing the novel he was reading. She hadn't told him about Kane revealing that he knew who she really was, or the possible murder connection to the word marks. Not yet. Why?
Why not?
Why wouldn't you tell him that? At least tell him about Kane. Like, the word mark thing, that's just a theory at this moment that could possibly do you more harm than good if you reveal that you know what those marks are. But the Kane thing, what do you stand to gain by not telling him about that? Like, that's kind of a we need a strategy meeting kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the library, she didn't have to think about competitions and brutes. Here she could savor the quiet and the calm. Except you really should be thinking about it, though, because Elena also tasked you with becoming the King's champion. And, more than likely, the killer is one of the other competitors. Like, who stands to gain from challengers dropping dead? Another challenger. So it's one of them. And I wish that I could say it was someone like Nox or Pelor, because that would actually be somewhat interesting. But it's pretty obviously Kane. So if you want to take him out...
It's Pelor.
God, I wish. I wish it was Fluttershy so bad.
It's Pelor. He's killing everybody, guys.
In my heart. In my heart of hearts.
He's sucking their brains out.
No,
she grumbled, drumming her fingers on the table. This is actually how you spend your spare time? A hint of a smile appeared on his lips. You should hope no one else hears about this. It would ruin your reputation. Nox would leave you for Kane. He chuckled to himself and opened his book again, leaning back in his chair. She stared at him for a moment, wondering if he'd stop laughing at her if he knew what she was researching. How it might help him, too. Yeah, crazy how he could be helping you do research right now. He's captain of the guard and probably has access to things that he won't show you without motive. Wild how we're just going to ignore that. Again, this is a character who is supposed to be competent and clever. if she had not hyped herself up so much to be the be-all end-all of assassinry, I wouldn't give as much of a shit about her missing these very obvious connections and very obvious next steps that she should be taking. Which, you know, I think is an unfair criticism of a lot of young adult literature, is expecting 13, 14, 15-year-old characters who are experiencing things for the first time to react to them as if they were 30 or 40-something adults with years of life experience behind them.
Yeah.
That said, she is an older teenager. She is supposed to have experience with at least some forms of these things. She is supposed to be stupidly competent.
Yeah.
For her age and background.
And
she does enjoy reading a lot, and she does know about word marks, a little bit at least, and, you know, all these other things. That's what makes it frustrating, because it seems that someone with her background and credentials should be making these logical steps, not just, oh, well, we're putting unrealistic expectations on a young teenager that's never done anything like this before. Presumably, as an assassin, you would need to have researched your targets a little bit. Why isn't she spending her time researching the other challengers? And, you know, in my better timeline world of this, she would be spending most of her time with Nehemia. And Nehemia with her. And they would kind of have that kind of, you know, back and forth to go off of, where Nehemia could ask a question about Adderlin's history, and then Alysicles has to fucking, like, come up with a way to answer her because she wants to help, but also not blow her cover as someone who feasibly shouldn't know. Like,
yeah.
It's stupid, and I hate it.
And also in the fixed timeline, Pelor would be the villain.
Yeah.
He'd be killing everybody.
We'd also have, like, a little tight-knit group of champions. Like,
yes,
you know, Nehemia would be, like, rooting for Nox or someone, and then Alysicles would be like, oh, yeah, like, Nox a good guy. Like, obviously, I want to win, but I'd be fine if Nox or Pelor won, because they're not assholes. And, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, kind of playing up a little bit of the ditziness instead of it actually being that she is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, sorry. I'm rambling and ranting again. Moving on.
I mean, that's why people watch these videos.
That's true, that's fair. Alysicles straightened in her chair, rubbing a nasty bruise on her leg. Naturally, it was from an intentional blow of Kael's wooden staff. She glared at him, but he continued reading. He was merciless during their lessons. He had her doing all sorts of activities, walking on her hands, juggling blades. It wasn't anything new, but it was unpleasant. But his temper had improved somewhat. He did seem a bit sorry for hitting her leg so hard. Alysicles supposed she liked him. The assassin slammed shut the tome, dust flying into the air. It was pointless. What? He asked, straightening.
Nothing,
she grumbled. What were word marks, and where did they come from? Just a whole, like, non sequitur couple of paragraphs that had nothing to do with each other here. And more importantly, why had she never heard of them before? They'd been all over Elena's tomb, too. Wait, she's never heard of them before? I'm sorry, I'm loading. Is she not the character that identified them to the reader? Like, I don't think anyone else came up to her and was like, oh, this is bad, like, there's word marks here, like, and I could be misremembering because Swiss cheese brain, but I'm like, I'm pretty sure she was the one who exposited about the existence of word marks, and it's like, I know that she's not super fluent, like, she couldn't tell you exactly what they mean, but in the very first couple of chapters, she was the one being like, oh, magic's not, like, entirely gone. Like, this creepy forest is still fey and blah, 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 blah. Like, it seems like she should be the character who knows what word marks are.
Yeah.
Maybe not everything about them. You know, this is an area where she only has some passing familiarity, and that's perfectly fair.
Yeah.
But now it's seeming like she doesn't know anything about them at all. And I'm like, well, then how did you recognize them? Like, isn't she the one who pointed out when she first saw the creepy clock tower and she was like, oh, there's a word mark, and like, was that not her?
I don't remember. It's been, I don't know.
Whatever. This book is already inconsistent within its own paragraphs, let alone chapters, let alone parts.
Yeah.
Like, we're on Act 2 now, and fuck if anything from Act 1 mattered. They'd been all over Elena's tomb, too, an ancient religion from a forgotten time. What were they doing here? And at the crime scene? There had to be a connection.
No shit. Continue.
It's almost like the evil you were warned about has something to do with the murders. I'm dying, Squirtle. So far, she hadn't learned much. According to one book, word marks were an alphabet. Though according to this book, no grammar existed with the word marks. Everything was just symbols that one had to string together. And they changed meaning depending on the marks around them.
Oh, kanji.
And or hieroglyphs.
Yeah.
They were painfully difficult to draw. They required precise lengths and angles, or they became something else entirely. Okay, kanji.
Kanji.
It's kanji. Stop glowering and sulking, Kale chided. He looked at the title of the book. Neither of them had mentioned Xavier's murder, and she'd gleaned no more information about it. Remind me what you're reading.
Nothing,
she said again, covering the book with her arms, but his brown eyes narrowed further and she sighed.
It's just about word marks, those sundial things by the clock tower. I was interested, so I started learning about them.
Half-truth, at least. She waited for the sneer and sarcasm, but it didn't come. He only said, and why the frustration? She looked to the ceiling, pouting.
All I can find is just radical and outlandish theories. I never knew any of this. Why? Some books claim the word is the force that holds together and governs Aeriel, and not just Aeriel, countless other worlds, too.
I've heard of it before, he said, picking up his book, but his eyes remained fixed on her face. I always thought the word was an old term for fate or destiny.
So did I, but the word isn't a religion, at least...
Have you heard about the word?
The bird is the word. Literally, the brain cells synced up and we immediately turned to each other like, bird's a winner.
Oh, you haven't heard the word? I was under the assumption that everyone had heard the word.
At least not in the northern parts of the continent, and it's not included in the worship of the goddess or the gods.
He set the book, only one goddess and multiple gods? Oh no. He set the book in his lap. Is there a point to this beyond your obsession with those marks in the garden? Are you that bored?
Worry for my safety is more like it.
That's a thought. Out loud, she says.
No, yes, it's interesting. Some theories suggest the mother goddess is just a spirit from one of these other worlds, and that she strayed through something called a word gate and found Aeriel in need of form in life.
Oh, she's so this. That sounds a little sacrilegious, he warned. He was old enough to more vividly recall the burnings and executions 10 years ago. The fucking what? Crazy to drop that on us now. What had it been like to grow up in the shadow of the king who had ordered so much destruction? To have lived here when royal families were slaughtered, when seers and magic wielders were burned alive, and the world fell into darkness and sorrow.
Darkness.
What would it be like to be reading about that instead?
Wouldn't that be something?
What if this informed literally any character's motivation currently?
Wow.
Instead of just being a little tidbit of history that, as far as we're aware, connects to nothing. Now, again, because we have basic media literacy, we can assume that Selena is from Terrasen, and this is the reason why she, lost her connection to her homeland and had to be raised by the King of Assassins and all that shit. Mm-hmm. Like, clearly there is a through line here. But she doesn't talk about it that much.
Yeah.
It's not something that's, in her head constantly. You can kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
Until they just randomly drop this shit in here. Like, this should be a character defining... This is a canon event for her that should greatly inform her motivations and character traits. That just doesn't. Okay. But she went on, needing to dump the contents of her mind in case all the pieces somehow assembled by speaking them out loud. Mood.
There's an idea that before the goddess arrived there was life, an ancient civilization, but somehow they disappeared. Perhaps through the word gate thing. Ruins exist. Ruins too old to be of fey making.
How this connected to the champion murders was beyond her. She was definitely grasping at straws. That's not me, that's the book. He set his feet down and put the book on the table. Can I be honest with you? Kaol leaned closer, and Alysicles leaned to meet him as he whispered, You sound like a raving lunatic. Alysicles made a disgusted noise and sat back, seething.
Sorry for having some interest in the history of our world.
As you said, these sound like radical and outlandish theories. He started reading once more and said without looking at her, Again, why the frustration? She rubbed her eyes.
Because, she said, almost whining, because I just want a straightforward answer to what the word marks are and why they're in the garden here of all places.
Magic had been wiped away on the king's orders, so why had something like the word marks been allowed to remain? To have them show up at the murder scene meant something. You should find another way to occupy your time, he said, returning to his book. Really? Because I feel like he, of all characters, would be like, yeah, why is that?
Well, okay. Avalon, you forget. The main character needs to figure it out.
Oh, you're so right. You're so right for that.
The main character needs to figure it out.
You're so smart and I love you.
You used my own words against me.
Not against you. Supporting you.
Against me.
Because you are correct. No one else will get to make a breakthrough in any of this. It has to be her. Because if someone else did it, we'd all be wondering why they aren't the main character. Which I do anyway, but here we are. Sorry, it's a long chapter. We were getting through it so quick before, and then
we hit a wall. J.K. Rowling got involved,
It was a crazy time. Usually guards watched her in the library for hours on end, day after day. What was he doing here? She smiled, her heart skipping a beat, and then looked at the books on the table. She ran again through the information she'd gathered. There was also the idea of the word gates, which appeared numerous times alongside the mention of word marks, but she'd never heard of them. When she'd first stumbled across the notion of word gates days ago, it had seemed interesting, and so she'd researched, digging through piles of old parchment only to find more puzzling theories. The gates were both real and invisible things. Humans could not see them, but they could be summoned and accessed using the word marks. They opened into other realms, some of them good, some of them bad. Things could come through from the other side and slither into Aeriel. It was due to this that many of the strange and fell creatures of Aeriel existed. Alysicles pulled another book toward her and grinned. It was as if someone had read her mind. It was a large black volume entitled The Walking Dead, in tarnished silver letters.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
AMC's The Walking Dead? You're going to be reading that for a while.
I hear there's a spinoff coming, finally.
Oh, yeah, they canceled it.
Again? I thought it was back on.
Oh, I don't know. I last I heard it was canceled.
Despite my love of zombie media, I never got into The Walking Dead.
Neither did I.
I think I watched the first 2 episodes and then decided that I just didn't... There were too many characters and I didn't give a shit. And
there's even more characters by the end.
Yeah, but we do have a friend who did, continue watching it because she liked these 2 characters in particular, even though they continually got shafted. And they were supposed to get a spinoff, and then that didn't happen, and then I heard rumors that they were going to go through with it, and so pour one out for that friend. Thankfully, the captain didn't see the title before she opened it, but She didn't... But, ... Why? Why is that but there? She didn't remember selecting this from the shelves. It reeked almost like soil, and Alysocles' nose crinkled as she turned the pages. She scanned for any sign of word marks, or any mention of a word gate, but she soon found something far more interesting. An illustration of a twisted, half-decayed face grinned at her, flesh falling from its bones.
Delightful.
It's The Walking Dead. The air chilled, and Alysocles rubbed her arms. Where had she found this? How had this escaped the burnings? How had any of these books escaped the purging fire 10 years ago? We'll never fucking know.
We will never know.
Because I'm, like, as we're going through here, I'm like, hey, yeah, what are these books doing here?
What are these two?
How are you reading these?
Who are you?
Who are you? And again, just bringing it up that it doesn't make sense that these are here doesn't make it make sense.
Yeah.
She shivered again, almost twitching. The hollow, mad eyes of the monster were full of malice. It seemed to look at her. She closed the book and pushed it to the end of the table. If the king knew this kind of book still existed in his library, he'd have it all destroyed. Unlike the great library of Orinth, here there were no master scholars to protect the invaluable books. Chaol kept reading. Something groaned, and Alysocles' head swung toward the back of the library. It was a guttural noise, an animalistic noise. Hey, maybe don't just leave that book lying out on the table. Maybe go put the Necronomicon somewhere safe.
For real.
Did you hear anything?
She asked. When do you plan on leaving? Was his only reply.
When I grow tired of reading.
She pulled the black book back to her, leafed past the terrifying portrait of the dead thing, and drew the candle closer to read the descriptions of various monsters. Dead ass, it's the Necronomicon.
She's like, anyway, that was weird. Anyway.
It's like me and my middle school science book when I got jump scared by an up-close photo of an anglerfish.
Hello.
I fell off my bar stool. Or I guess you shouldn't call them a bar stool, but you know what I'm talking about. The stools.
Yeah, it's a bar stool.
I was sitting at one of the lab tables and I was on a stool and the teacher was like, oh, time to open your book to such and such page. So I tried to, do the thing where like you peek at the corner and then you pretend like you just opened to that page, like all on your own.
Cool.
Yeah, but I misjudged. And there was a full page photograph of an anglerfish.
Oh my god.
And I just like jump scared myself and fell out of my seat.
Hilarious. Pathetic.
Wonderful. In case anyone had any delusions that Avalon was ever cool. No, I wasn't.
No. It's okay.
No.
I love you.
There was a scraping noise somewhere beneath her feet. Close, as if someone were running a fingernail along the ceiling below.
The ceiling below?
I think you mean the table below? Or, no. Oh, some scraping noise beneath her feet, like someone's on the floor beneath her scraping along the ceiling. That's a really weird description.
Yeah.
Alysocles slammed the book shut and stepped away from the table. The hair on her arms rose, and she almost stumbled into the nearest table as she waited for something, a hand, a wing, a gaping fanged mouth to appear and grab her.
Do you feel that?
She asked Chaol, who slowly, maliciously grinned. He held out his dagger and dragged it on the marble floor, creating the exact sound and feeling. Oh, let's go. W for Chaol.
Yeah!
Hell yeah.
He's just like...
Damned idiot.
She snarled. She grabbed 2 heavy books from the table and stalked from the library, making sure to leave The Walking Dead far behind. So you just left the Necronomicon out where anyone can find it.
Why not?
And again, because I have some semblance of media literacy, I'm going to be like, you're able to access a lot of books about word marks and weird creepy shit with very little difficulty, which probably means you're not the only one able to access it, which probably means someone else has been here and read these books already.
Okay, I think we might actually be at the halfway mark for this book.
Like page count wise?
Yeah, let me see.
Because, like, it's 55 chapters, but we're on, like, chapter 27 or 28 right now.
Okay, so we have 404 pages, and yeah, we just ended on page 210.
So we're just slightly past halfway.
We're suffering, guys.
We are definitively in the second half.
Yes.
Please. Please. End my suffering.
Spare me my life. Spare me my life.
And if you can spare some change, I have a coffee account that I'm trying to grow. Haha, it's not Patreon this time. If you listen to the last video, you will know that I am slowly moving my operations from Patreon toward coffee. Not sure how that's going to go. The Patreon will still be there. So if you would rather support me on Patreon, please do so. It's perfectly all right. I'm not a huge preference for coffee right now. But I have talked to some other creators, and they've said that in terms of the fees that get deducted from your donations, Ko-fi is a little bit better. I'm also able to sell books directly on Ko-fi, so if you want to buy my books and see how I fuck things up, then you can go over and you can get the ebooks. It's pay what you want starting at $1, or you can get signed copies of our paperbacks. And those are a little bit more limited in stock because I just don't really have the funds right now to order more. But there are some available there that come signed, and they have some goodies that come with them.
Okay, so wait a second. Sorry. Alright, so we just finished chapter 27, and there's 55 chapters, so we're also like, textually, that was, we just passed the halfway point.
Oh, thank God. Please.
This is the halfway point, guys. It's fucking however many
Let's fucking
chapters
go
from here.
All right.
I can't count. It's 26 more videos.
Oh, plus the bonus videos. We have 28 more videos.
Oh, we have 27 more videos then.
Well, 27 chapters plus...
Well, 26 more chapters. Because it's, or...
7 plus 8 is 15.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, I was doing the math wrong. But
it's late.
Yeah. Alright.
And math is neither of our strong subject.
Hey, now, I got into GATE on my math scores.
I mean, so did I, but I never gave a shit about math. Okay, so, alright, Patreon or Ko-fi, either one, you'll get the same rewards. If you are already on my Patreon and you want to move over to Ko-fi, same tiers, same rewards are set up there. Rewards are going to be posted through Discord, so even if you don't chat in our Discord very often, that is where you can get access to your rewards. So do make sure that if you join Patreon or Ko-fi and you want your rewards, to also hop into the Rose Garden Discord server. There is a channel that is just for the links to rewards, so you could mute everything except for that if you don't, feel like talking to us. Which I don't know why you wouldn't, because today we had an amazing discussion about the implications of a feminist retelling of Hades and Persephone, and is it possible to actually have a feminist retelling of Hades and Persephone, and that will be turned into a video on this channel. Eventually, when I wrote half the script in that chat, I think, but it's cool. And you get to, see what I'm reading and working on, and you get early access to things, and some things that will never be posted publicly you'll have access to through rewards. So it's a great time. I don't know if this is convincing anyone or if anyone's even still listening, but if you are, thank you. Thanks for just hanging around for a second. I hope you're having a wonderful evening, and have good dreams. It's a little special, good dreams charm from me to you. Mwah. There you go. You're welcome. I kiss your cheek. Mwah. Okay.
Time to go to bed.
Time to sleep now. Good night. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or in the description below, please consider joining my Patreon. Your support means so much to me and allows me to continue making content. If you want to support my content in different ways, consider buying my books, donating on Ko-fi, subscribing to the channel, or even just giving this video a like and comment. Any and everything is appreciated so much. Keep growing till next time, Rose Garden!